All right, so welcome to the second screencast for Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is about competitive markets for goods and services. And in this section, we're going to be talking about how output is determined for firms in the short run. The learning objectives for this screencast are: you should be able to explain how the price and total revenue curve are related. You should be able to explain why price equals average revenue equals marginal revenue. You should be able to explain why firms face perfectly elastic demand curves in the short run. All right, so in a perfectly competitive market, firms are price takers. All right, we developed that in the last screencast. The equilibrium price and the industry output are determined by the supply and demand. All right, so here is one of our typical supply and demand diagrams that we had earlier. Radishes at the equilibrium here, radishes are 40 cents a pound, and there are 10 million pounds of radishes per month being produced in this particular industry. All firms in the industry are price takers, so they can all sell as much as they want or as little as they want at the market price of 40 cents. All right, so no firm would have any incentive to sell below 40 cents because they always want to get the highest price possible, and no firm can sell for more than 40 cents because if you try to charge 41 cents or 42 cents in a perfectly competitive market, consumers are not going to purchase that good. All right, so let's think about the total revenue that the firm receives. All right, so the firm can't set the price, but they can set the quantity. So they can affect their total revenue not by the price, but by the quantity. Total revenue is one of the big considerations they have when they decide what is the quantity that we want to sell. All right, total revenue, after all, is just price times quantity. So they can pick their revenue by knowing the price, which is given by the market, and then setting the quantity that they want to produce. So here you can see the different total revenue curves for a firm. And it all depends upon the price. If the price is 60 cents a pound, then the total revenue curve for a firm as they produce 1,000 and then 2,000 and then 3,000 pounds of radishes here, you can see a total revenue goes up very quickly. After all, the price here is just the slope. When I increase by a unit, what is the increase in revenue? Well, it's exactly equal to the price. So the slope of the total revenue curve is just whatever the price is. If the market price was 40, then the slope of this total revenue curve would be 0.4. All right. The same thing if the price was 20 cents, then the slope of the total revenue curve would be 0.2. All right. So what about marginal and average revenue? Well, here, the marginal revenue, the average revenue, and the price are actually all the same thing. After all, what is marginal revenue? Well, it's the revenue that the firm gets for producing one more of the good. Well, what is that? Well, that's just the price. Also here, that's also the average revenue. If you take the total total revenue the firm gets, divide by the total quantity, it's going to also be the price. All right, so in a perfectly competitive market, the marginal revenue, average revenue, and price are all the same. So if the price were 60 cents, the marginal revenue the firm receives is also 60 cents. Their average revenue is also 60 cents. All right. So what is the algebra of why the average revenue equals the price? I just mentioned it earlier, but here it is in equation form. The average revenue is just total revenue divided by quantity. All right. That's also the same, though, as P times Q, because total revenue is just price times quantity divided by Q. And of course, those two Q's would cross out, and so you can see here that average revenue equals price. Average revenue equals total revenue over quantity. Price is here when the Q's cross out. All right. So what about the marginal revenue curve and demand that the firm faces? Well, the marginal revenue curve for a firm is a flat line. We already saw that before. It is equal to the price. If you sell one more of a unit, what is your marginal revenue? It's the price. It doesn't matter how many you sell because it's a perfectly competitive market. You cannot change the price. All right. So your changing the quantity that you sell doesn't affect the price. So the marginal revenue curve is a flat line. All right. The next one they produce always gives them just the price. So the marginal revenue curve is the same as the demand curve facing our perfectly competitive firm. Let's take a look at graphically why that is. All right. So here is the marginal revenue equals average revenue equals price curve that we saw before. And what we're saying here is that is the same thing as the demand curve that the firm faces. Why? Well, if the firm wants to produce a quantity of a quantity at Q1, they can get 40 cents per pound. How many can they get at Q2? Well, they can get 40 cents per pound. So the demand here is a perfectly flat curve. They can sell as much as they want at that price. The demand is infinite almost in this perfectly competitive market at that price. They can sell as much as they want or as little as they want at that price. All right. And that's all for that screencast, and we'll move on to the next one in a minute.